It was October, in the autumn of 1936, in a quiet convent in Poland, and a small, sickly nun in her early 30s was making a retreat. 8 days of silence, 8 days of prayer, the ordinary hidden life of a woman the world had never heard of and never would. In her lifetime, a cook, a gardener, a doorkeeper, a sister of no importance at all. And then, on one of those silent days, something took hold of her that she would spend the rest of her short life trying to find the words for. She felt herself led, not in body, but in spirit. Led by an angel, she said, to the edge of a great abyss, and the angel did not ask her if she was willing. She understood, with a certainty that left no room for doubt, that she had been brought there by the command of God himself. And then she was led down into hell. Not a story she had read, not a sermon she had heard. She wrote afterward that she would have died on the spot, at the very sight of it, had the power of God not held her up. And when it was over, she took up her pen, and she wrote down what she had seen, and she told us plainly why, so that no one could ever again say there is no such place. Welcome back to Afterlife Stories. Light a candle if you have one near you, and come and sit with me a while, because tonight I want to tell you something true, and I will tell you up front. This is one of the heavier nights we will spend together, because tonight we are going to a hard place. But stay with me to the end, because I promise you this. We are not going there to be frightened. We are going there for one reason, and one reason only, and it is the most hopeful reason in the world. Stay with me, and you will see. And before we go a step further, let me say something to you gently, the way a pastor should. If you are someone who struggles with fear, with dread about death, or about your own soul, or with anxiety that keeps you up at night, I want you to hear me clearly. This story is not meant to torment you. The God at the center of it is not waiting to catch you out. He is, as you will see, a father running toward you. If tonight stirs up a fear that feels too heavy to carry alone, please reach out to a priest, or to someone you trust, or to a professional who can help. God works through people, and asking for help is not weakness. It is an act of faith. Now, let me give you my honesty, the way I always do. Everything I am going to tell you tonight is documented. It comes from a real woman, with a real name, who wrote it down in her own hand in a diary the whole world can read today. I will give you her name, the year, the source, and I will be honest with you the whole way through about two different kinds of things. What the Catholic Church holds for certain, as binding teaching, that I can stand on with my full weight, and what comes to us as the private experience of one holy soul, which the Church has examined and approved, but does not require you to believe in the same way. I will not blur that line, because I respect you too much to dress up one woman's vision as if it were a chapter of the Catechism. They are different things, and tonight you will know exactly which is which. So here is the question we are sitting with. Is hell real? And if a saint were taken there and brought back and told to write it down, what would she most want us to do with what she saw? The answer, I think, will surprise you, because it is not what you would expect from a story about hell. Let me tell you about the woman first. Her name was Helena Kowalska. She was born in 1905, the third of 10 children, in a poor village in central Poland, to a family that worked the land and had very little. She had almost no schooling, less than 3 years of it. As a girl, she worked as a household servant to help feed her family. She was not learned. She was not important. She was not by any measure the world uses anyone you would ever have noticed. And when she entered religious life, in her 20s, she took the name by which the Church now knows her, Sister Maria Faustina, of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. And inside the convent, her life stayed hidden. She did the lowest work. She cooked, she tended the garden, she answered the door. Her own sisters in religion did not suspect that anything unusual was happening in her soul. She looked, to everyone around her, like an ordinary, simple, rather frail young nun. I want you to hold on to that, because it matters enormously for what comes next. The world is full of people who claim grand spiritual experiences, and very often the claiming is the whole point, the attention, the importance, the spotlight. Faustina was the opposite of that. She told almost no one. She wrote in her diary only because her spiritual director, the priest who guided her soul, instructed her to. She would far rather have stayed invisible. This was not a woman building a reputation. This was a woman under obedience, recording what she had been given, and frightened, much of the time, that she would get it wrong, or that no one would believe her, or that she was unworthy of any of it. That is the texture of a true mystic, not a false one. The reluctance, the smallness, the fear of being noticed at all. And it was not an easy life, not by any measure. She was often unwell, with the tuberculosis that would eventually take her, in years before there was much medicine to be had for it. She struggled, by her own account, to be believed even by the priests she confided in. Some of them thought her overwrought, or imaginative, or simply mistaken. For a long time she carried what she had been given almost entirely alone, with no one to tell her whether any of it was real. It was only when she came to the city of Vilnius and met a priest named Father Michael Sopocko that she found a confessor, who took her seriously, who guided her, and who eventually told her to write everything down. That diary, the one we read today, the one with the vision of hell in it, exists because an ordinary parish priest had the patience to listen to a sick young nun and the wisdom not to dismiss her, and even then, she suffered. There were those in religious life around her who found her difficult to understand, who watched her with suspicion. The road of a real mystic, I have come to believe, almost always runs through misunderstanding. The false ones are celebrated. The true ones are doubted and tested and made to wait. Faustina was made to wait her whole short life, and there was something burning at the center of her short life. One great message that everything else served. It was the message of God's mercy. Faustina recorded, in that diary, that the Lord came to her again and again, not with thunder, but with tenderness, and that he told her to remind the world of a mercy wider than any sin a human being could commit. She wrote that he said to her, in words the Church has treasured ever since, "Before I come as a just judge, I am coming first as the King of mercy." That was her whole mission, not fear, mercy. The painting you may have seen of Christ with two rays streaming from his heart, one pale and one red, with the words, "Jesus, I trust in you," beneath it, that came from her. The whole devotion the Church now calls Divine Mercy came through that obscure little nun who answered the convent door. I tell you this now, before we descend, because you must keep it in front of you the whole time we are down there. The woman who was taken to see hell was the great apostle of mercy. Hold those two things together. They are not opposites. By the end, you will see they are the same thing. She died young, of tuberculosis, in 1938, only 33 years old, still hidden, still unknown. And then, decades later, the world learned her name, because in the year 2000, before 250,000 people in St. Peter's Square, Pope John Paul II declared that humble Polish nun a saint of the Catholic Church, and he did it on a particular day. He did it on the very day he established, for the whole world, the Feast of Divine Mercy. The first canonized saint of the new millennium was the Apostle of Mercy. Remember that, when we are standing at the edge of the abyss, the Church did not raise her up because she saw hell. The Church raised her up because she carried mercy to the world. Now, let me tell you what she saw. It was during that 8-day retreat, in October of 1936, and in her diary, in the entry that scholars number 741, she begins with a single, quiet sentence that I find almost unbearable in its plainness. Today, she wrote, "I was led by an angel to the chasms of hell." Sit with the calm of that for a moment. There is no drama in how she says it, no relish, no horror story flourish. Just, today, I was led. As you might say, today I was sent to the market. She understood that she had not gone there on her own, and she had not gone there out of curiosity. She was led by an angel at the command of God. Picture her for a moment, because it helps. A young woman in a grey habit, on her knees in the silence of a retreat, her eyes perhaps closed, the rest of the convent going about its quiet day around her, none of them knowing. And in that stillness, she is taken, not in her body, she is careful to say, but in her soul, down, away from the safe small world of the chapel, towards something she had no words for, and would spend the rest of her life reaching after. There is a great fear in her writing, but there is also obedience, and there is the angel beside her, and there is the unmistakable sense that God himself has willed this, and so she goes. And later she will write the line that tells you, more than any description of flame, just how real it was to her. She wrote that she would have died at the very sight of those torches if the omnipotence of God had not supported her. Hear that. A grown woman, telling you plainly that what she saw was so terrible that the seeing of it would have killed her on the spot, had not the very power of God been holding her up while she looked. That is not the language of a daydream. That is the language of someone who went somewhere and barely came back. And what she found there, she describes not as a feeling, not as a mood, but as a place, a real place, with a kind of structure to it. And she lays out, soberly, almost like a witness giving testimony in a courtroom, the kinds of suffering she was shown. 7 of them. And I am going to walk you through them, gently, the way she wrote them, not to frighten you, but because she begged us to know them, and I owe her honesty the respect of telling you what she actually said. Let me take them slowly. The first torture she wrote, the one that makes hell what it is the loss of God. Stop there with me. Before the fire, before anything else, the deepest agony of that place is simply this: to have lost God, to be cut off, forever, from the one for whom the whole soul was made. Every one of us was created with a hunger for God at our very center, whether we name it or not. Every restless longing you have ever felt, every ache that no thing on earth could quite fill, was that hunger. And Faustina is telling us that the core wound of hell is that hunger, awakened fully, with the object of it gone forever. The soul finally sees clearly the one it was made for, and knows, with total clarity, that it has lost him by its own hand. That is the first and worst of it, not flames, the absence of God. The second, she said, is the perpetual remorse of conscience, the endless gnawing knowledge of what one did, and what one might have been, and what one threw away, that never ever quiets. We know a little of this even here, the thing we did that we cannot take back, the 3 in the morning ache of regret. Now imagine that, with no morning ever coming to relieve it, no distraction, no forgetting, just the truth of one's own choices, held up before the soul, forever. The third torture, she wrote, is that one's condition will never change, and there, I think, is the heart of the dread, more than any image of fire, the word never. Here, on this side, no matter how bad things get, there is always the next day, the turning of the season, the hope that something might shift. Faustina is telling us that the door to that hope is what closes. The condition is fixed. It does not get better. It does not end. The never of it is its own torment. The fourth, she said, is the fire. But hear how carefully she describes it. Because it is not the fire you are picturing. It is a fire, she wrote, that penetrates the soul without destroying it. A purely spiritual fire, she said, kindled by the anger of God. Not the crackling fire of a hearth, a fire that reaches the spirit itself, and burns, and yet does not consume, does not put an end to the one who suffers it. I will not dwell here, and I will not paint it for you, because that is not what this channel does, and it is not what Faustina wants. But I tell you what she said, plainly, a suffering that touches the very soul, and does not stop. The fifth torture she names is continual darkness, and a terrible suffocating smell. And yet she says, in a strange and dreadful detail, that despite the darkness, the damned and the demons see one another, and see all the evil, their own and others. The sixth is the constant company of Satan himself. And the seventh, she wrote, is horrible despair, hatred of God, vile words, curses and blasphemies. And then she adds something that I find almost the most sobering line of the whole account. These, she says, are the tortures suffered by all the damned together, but they are not the end of it. Each soul, she wrote, undergoes its own particular sufferings related to the manner in which it sinned. In other words, the loss is shaped exactly to the life. Hell, in her account, is not a single furnace into which everyone is thrown alike. It is terribly personal. Now, I told you we would not stay long in that place, and we will not. But before we climb back out, I have to give you the 2 things Faustina herself most wanted you to take from it, because they are the whole reason she wrote it down. They change everything. The first is a single observation she made, almost in passing, and it has haunted the church ever since. I noticed one thing, she wrote, that most of the souls there are those who disbelieved that there is a hell. Read that again with me. Most of the souls there did not believe there was such a place. Do you see why that detail mattered so much to her? It is the great trick. She is telling us the quietest and most effective lie of all. Not to make people wicked, simply to persuade them that there are no real stakes, that it does not finally matter how we live, that the whole idea of judgment is a relic, a scare story, something modern people have grown out of. And Faustina says the souls who were most sure there was nothing to fear were the very ones she saw. That is sobering. But hold it lightly, and hold it with the rest of what the Church teaches, because I am going to be careful with you about exactly what that does and does not mean. And the second thing is why she wrote at all. She tells us, in her own words, "I am writing this at the command of God," she said, "so that no soul may find an excuse by saying there is no hell, or that nobody has ever been there, and so no one can say what it is like." There it is. That was the assignment. Not to terrify, to remove an excuse, to close off the one escape hatch that lets a soul drift through life, thinking none of it is real. She put her name to it. Plainly, I, Sister Faustina, by the order of God, have visited the abysses of hell, so that I might tell souls about it and testify to its existence. She did it under obedience. She did it as a warning given out of love, the way you would grab the arm of someone about to step off a cliff they cannot see. Let me step out of the story for a moment. As a pastor, because I have spent much of my life near the dying, and what Faustina wrote touches something I have seen with my own eyes. I have sat at a great many deathbeds, and one thing has struck me, over the years, more than any other. It is not the people of deep faith who tend to be most afraid at the end. Very often, it is the opposite. The ones who have made their peace, who have prayed and confessed and trusted, they are, more often than you would imagine, almost serene. They are going home. But I have also sat with people who spent a whole lifetime insisting that none of it was real, that death was simply a switch turned off, nothing to prepare for, nothing on the other side, and I have watched more than once a strange terror come into the room at the very end, as though at the threshold some part of them suddenly knew better. I am not telling you that to frighten you. I am telling you because it is exactly the thing Faustina noticed. The danger she named was not wickedness. It was the comfortable certainty that there is nothing to get ready for, and I have seen at the edge of life what that certainty costs. Make your peace early, my friends. Do not wait for the threshold to discover the road went somewhere after all. Now let me step out of the story, as a pastor, because I have promised you honesty, and now I owe you the most important part of the whole night. We have to sort out carefully what we have just heard, because there are layers here, and they are not all the same, and I will not let them blur together. Here is the first layer, and it is solid rock. That hell is real, that it is possible for a soul to be finally, eternally separated from God. That is not Faustina's private opinion, and it does not stand or fall on her vision. It is the constant teaching of the Catholic Church, taught by Christ himself in the Gospels, held for 2,000 years. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, in the paragraphs numbered 1033 through 1035, teaches it plainly. And listen to how the Church actually defines it, because it is so much more piercing and so much more just than the cartoon most people carry around. Hell, the Catechism says, is the state of definitive self-exclusion from communion with God. Self-exclusion, not a God who flings souls into a pit in a rage, a God who, with infinite sorrow, finally honors the choice a soul has made again and again, with its own freedom, the choice to refuse him. Hell is not God failing to love, it is love refused, all the way to the end. We cannot be united to God against our own will. And a soul that spends a whole life saying to God, not you, not your way, never you, God will, in the end, with grief, allow that no. That is what the Church means. And let me say that more carefully, because the difference matters. The door of hell, the saints have always said, is locked from the inside. And here is something the Catechism is just as clear about, and I want you to hear it, because it guards your hope. The Church teaches, in those very same pages, that God predestines no one to go to hell. No one. There is no soul God made for that. He wills the salvation of every single person. Everyone. He sent his Son to die for everyone. Hell is real, and it is possible, precisely because love is real and freedom is real, but it is never God's desire for you, and never his plan for you. And the whole strain of his heart, from the first page of Scripture to the last, is bent on keeping you out of it. Keep both of those in your hands at once. Hell is real, and God is doing everything, short of overriding your freedom, to bring you home. Now the second layer, Faustina's vision itself, the angel, the descent, the 7 torments laid out just so. That is what the Church calls private revelation. And here I have to be very precise with you, because this is exactly the kind of thing that gets twisted. The Church examined Faustina's writings with great care. They were once even held under suspicion and restricted, until the examination was complete and then approved, and she was beatified and canonized, her diary published with the Church's blessing. So this is not a wild claim from the fringe. It is approved, but approved private revelation, even from a canonized saint, is still not the same as defined doctrine. The Catechism teaches this, in the paragraphs numbered 66 and 67, that no new public revelation is to be expected after Christ, that the Christian faith is complete in him, and that private revelations, however holy, do not belong to the deposit of faith, and do not bind the conscience of every believer. Their role, the Church says, is to help us live more fully by the gospel we already have, not to add to it. So I can tell you with my full weight that hell is real. What I cannot do is hand you Faustina's 7 torments and say, this is the official map. You must believe every detail exactly so. The Church does not ask that of you, and neither will I. You are free to be moved by her account, to let it wake you, to take it as the testimony of a great saint, while knowing it is testimony, and holding it as such. Now I have to deal with the doubter, because I can hear him, and he deserves an honest answer. The doubter in you is asking, Robin, how do we know she really saw anything? Maybe a sick young woman, exhausted by fasting and illness, had a vivid nightmare and wrote it down. It is a fair question, and I will not wave it away. Here is the honest answer. I cannot prove to you what happened inside Faustina's soul on a day in October of 1936. No one can. That is the nature of a private mystical experience. It cannot be put under a microscope. What I can tell you is this. The Church does not canonize people lightly, and she is more cautious about claimed visions than the skeptics ever realize. Faustina's writings were scrutinized for decades, suspended at one point, examined by theologians, before they were ever approved. And the woman herself shows none of the marks of the fraud or the fantasist, no self-promotion, no profit, no spotlight, a hidden life, a reluctance to be believed, and a single consistent message of mercy that has borne extraordinary fruit across the world. You may still decide her vision was only a dream. You are free to, but the doctrine it points to, that hell is real and that mercy is greater, does not rest on her dream at all. It rests on Christ. Faustina is a witness pointing at something. Even if you set the witness aside, the thing she points at is still there. And here is what we do not know, and I will not pretend otherwise. We do not know who is in hell. The Church has never declared, of any single human being, that this one is damned, not Judas, not anyone. She has named thousands of souls. She is certain are in heaven, the canonized saints. She has never once claimed to know a particular soul is lost. We are not given that knowledge, and we should be very glad we are not, because it is not our business, and it would crush us. We do not know how many. We are not permitted to despair of anyone, including ourselves. The Church even allows us to hope and to pray that in the end, mercy reaches further than we can imagine, while never presuming, never treating the danger as unreal. That tension between sober warning and unbreakable hope is exactly where Faustina lived, and it is exactly where she wants to leave you. Which brings me to the thing I have been waiting all night to tell you, because here is the turn. Here is the whole reason this story exists, and the reason I asked you at the very start to trust me and stay to the end. Faustina did not see hell so that you would live in fear. She saw it so that you would run to mercy. Remember who she was, the apostle of divine mercy. The same hand that wrote down the 7 torments wrote, page after page, that the greater the sinner, the greater his right to God's mercy, that no soul that has trusted in that mercy has ever been disappointed, that there is no sin, no past, no wreckage so great that it can outrun the mercy of God, for a soul that turns to him. Do you see what she has done? She has shown you the cliff, only so that you would take the hand reaching out to pull you back from it. The vision of hell and the message of mercy are not 2 messages. They are one. The cliff makes sense of the hand. The hand is the whole point of the cliff. A warning is only ever as loving as the rescue it is pointing you toward. And Faustina's warning points, every inch of it, at a Saviour with his arms open and 2 rays of light pouring from his heart, saying the simplest words in all of Christianity, Jesus, I trust in you. Think of how strange that is, and how telling. Of all the souls God could have chosen to carry a vision of hell to the modern world, he chose the one whose entire life's work was mercy. He did not give the vision to a thundering preacher of doom. He gave it to the gentlest possible messenger, the apostle of trust, the woman who would spend her last years writing down a tenderness so wide it frightened even her. That choice is itself the message. It is as if God were saying, yes, the danger is real. I will not lie to my children about that. But look who I am sending to tell you. Look at the face I am putting on the warning. It is mercy. It is always, underneath everything, mercy. And there is one line of hers that I want to hand you to keep, because I think it is the antidote to the whole fear this night could leave in you. Faustina recorded that the Lord said the soul that approaches his mercy with trust receives more than it even asks for, and that the only thing that can keep a soul from that ocean of mercy is its own refusal to come. Not the size of the sin, not the length of the wandering, only the refusal. So the question is, never have I done too much to be forgiven. The mercy of God has no floor it cannot reach beneath. The only question is, will I come? Will the first let myself be found? And that you can answer tonight. You can answer it right where you are sitting. The whole of Faustina's hard journey down into the dark was so that you would say yes. So let me turn to you now, gently, and ask what this asks of you. And it is not what you might fear. It does not ask you to be afraid. It asks you to take your own soul seriously and to take God's mercy even more seriously than that. Here is the danger. Faustina named the soul drifting through life half asleep, assuming nothing is really at stake, that there will always be time, that the whole question can be put off forever. The warning is simply this: wake up. You are not a passing accident of biology destined to flicker out. You are an eternal soul, made for God, on a real road, with a real destination. And what you do with your freedom matters more than anything else about your life. That is not a reason to be afraid. It is a reason to live like your life means something, because it does, infinitely. And here is the second half. And it is all hope. If you have ever lain awake fearing you have gone too far, done too much, wandered too long, that the door has somehow closed on you, hear the message of the woman who actually saw what lies on the other side of that closed door. It is open for you. Right now, tonight, it is wide open. The mercy of God is not a reward for the people who never needed it. It is a flood aimed straight at the people who do. The only soul that mercy cannot reach is the one that refuses, to the very end, to be reached. And you, the fact that you are sitting here, in the candlelight, your heart stirred, listening, that is not the posture of a soul that is refusing. That is the posture of a soul that God is already drawing home. So do the one thing Faustina spent her whole life begging the world to do. Do not be afraid of his justice. Trust his mercy. Turn to him. He is not waiting to condemn you. The whole staggering effort of God, from the cross outward, is bent on saving you. Run to that today, while it is still called today, and do one concrete thing with it, so it does not stay a feeling. Make your peace with God. If it has been years since you sat in a confessional, go. Let it be wiped clean. There is nothing waiting there but mercy. Pray, even clumsily, even just the 4 words from Faustina's image, Jesus, I trust in you. Say them tonight, in the dark, before you sleep. And pray for the ones you love who have wandered, the ones you fear for, the family member who has stopped believing any of it is real. You cannot force their freedom, but you can storm heaven for them. Faustina would tell you that no prayer for a soul is ever wasted, and that mercy can reach a heart you have given up on. Be that prayer for someone tonight. Let me pray with you now, before we go. Lord Jesus, King of mercy, we have stood tonight at a hard edge, and we are not afraid, because you are here. We thank you for the warning given through your servant Faustina out of love, so that not one of us would drift toward that cliff in the dark. But more than the warning, Lord, we thank you for the hand, for the mercy that is wider than any sin, deeper than any failure, reaching further than any of us deserves. Tonight I ask you for every soul listening to me. Let not one of them be lost. Wake the sleeping, comfort the fearful, and to anyone here who is carrying a secret weight, a shame they think has put them beyond your reach, show them, tonight, that there is no such place beyond your reach. I ask you too, for the ones we love who have wandered far from you, and in the quiet now, bring one of them to your mind, and hold them up to the King of mercy, who refuses no one who turns to him. And when our own hour comes, Lord, let us meet you not as the judge we feared, but as the mercy we trusted. Jesus, we trust in you. We ask it in your holy name. Amen. Pray for the holy souls. Keep a light burning, and don't be afraid of the dark. You were made for the light on the other side of it. I'll see you next time, by candlelight. And before you go, if there is someone you love who has wandered from God, someone you are praying home, leave their first name in the comments. Don't tell us their story, just the name. And let this be the place where tonight, a whole community of us lifts them up to the King of mercy together. No soul is ever beyond that prayer.